Come here.
You could say Brittany Crable needs Giovanni as much as Giovanni needs Brittany.
He knows when I'm upset. He just wants to cuddle.
The dog represents freedom.
Come on, baby. Come on.
And how far Brittany has come since she was arrested by Henrico police nearly 3 years ago.
Every day that I wake up that I'm not in a lifestyle is something amazing, you know?
For more than a decade, Brittany was a prostitute.
I didn't believe I was good enough to be anything but that.
Her life controlled by pimps.
Like this one.
This tattoo essentially branded her as their property.
Basically that I was Couture's girl. Some bought me, some sold me, some left me.
It all began just days before she turned 15 when her much older boyfriend drove her from Philadelphia to New York and pressured her to have sex with another man for money.
I told him, you know, I just want to get a bus ticket and go home. You can keep the rest of the money, just give me the money for the bus ticket. And he wouldn't let me.
Soon after, she says she would become addicted to the lifestyle.
How many men do you think you had as customers?
Oh my God, I knew this question was coming. Tens of thousands.
We asked her how she was able to endure a lifestyle that often left her bruised and sometimes beaten.
I've been stabbed. I've been beaten in the back of the head by 2x4s. I've been laid up in hospitals.
Brittany says she had been molested by a family member when she was very young, and that in a strange way, selling herself for sex would often give her a feeling of power.
In that moment, I felt beautiful and I felt wanted and I felt, you know, like I mattered. And so that feeling is kind of, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That feeling is kind of what like drove me to stay in it for so long.
Then came September of 2015.
We were there for maybe 22 hours before I got caught up in the sting.
She says her pimp at the time, Calvin Wynn, had taken her from Houston to Nebraska to Chicago and North Carolina before they ended up at a motel here at the intersection of Parham and Broad.
He was the worst pimp that I had.
What do you mean?
He was much more physically abusive, verbally abusive. If I didn't make a certain amount of money, I wasn't eating.
An undercover detective arranged a date with Brittany, and both she and Wynn were arrested. But because of a new focus on human trafficking in Henrico, police and prosecutors offered Brittany help.
He asked me if this is really what I wanted to do. And I was like, I don't have a choice. I'm a felon. I have nothing else to do. Like, what do you mean? And he basically told me that there was a way out.
Do you feel like they saved your life?
Definitely.
I may be the first man that's treated her with respect for several years.
Deputy Commonwealth's Attorney Mike Feinmel oversees human trafficking cases in the county.
One of the first cases that we actually had involved a 13-year-old runaway who was working for a pimp, and that was really eye-opening and changing for us and how we approach things.
He met us in the room where Henrico brings sex trafficking victims to get them help.
Sweatpants, sweatshirts, undergarments, toothpaste.
He says since 2012, Henrico prosecuted 152 people for charges related to pandering and sex trafficking.
This is an industry that's predicated on human beings taking advantage of other human beings.
Feinmel says Henrico's unique geographic position, being centrally located near Washington, D.C. and at the intersection of two major interstates, makes it a prime spot for sex trafficking.
And I think the word is out that Richmond is a good place to make money.
While her pimp was prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced to 10 years in prison, Henrico dropped the charges against Brittany and found a program for human trafficking victims in her hometown for her to attend.
I went, but at that time, I still wasn't ready.
She says she only lasted 30 days before the lifestyle beckoned.
I called an old pimp that I used to have, and I went back and started working and went to Atlanta, got locked up, and Henrico flew an officer in a little 4-passenger Cessna all the way from Henrico to Atlanta, Georgia, to get me and fly me back.
At that point, Henrico put an ankle monitor on her and sent her to a year-long program in Williamsburg.
That was it. 2 years later, here I am. It's my ringtone. Like, you know, you don't own me. You can't tell me what to do. I don't belong to you.
Now she's back living in the Richmond area.
No, I'm not just one of your little toys.
And while she says she still has trouble holding a job due to anxiety, she hopes to ultimately become an advocate for sex trafficking victims to spread awareness and help others get a second chance.
I used to believe that I was only good for laying on my back, and I was only good for making somebody else rich. And I realized that if I could put that same effort and energy into believing that I can be something that nobody ever thought I could, okay, and I can.
Since Henrico started targeting sex trafficking operations 5 years ago, they've partnered with Bon Secours to get sex trafficking victims free medical care for 1 year. They've also worked with Safe Harbor to create a house where sex trafficking victims can live while they transition back into society. Working for you, I'm Melissa Hippolyte for CBS 6.
Problem Solvers Investigations, every Tuesday and Wednesday at 11 on CBS 6 News.